What's happening, Rec? Welcome back to another episode, another edition of Riot Starter TV. I think y'all should be tired of me right about now. You know what I'm saying? I've been popping up a little too much. You know what I mean? Shout out to all the good folks out there who have been consistent in supporting our platform. If, again, as we always say, if it's your first time tuning in to Black Power Media, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can stay in tune and in touch with all the great things that's going on. We've had some heavyweights on the last several weeks. Everyone from Juliana Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba's daughter, to Murray Fanon, France Fanon's daughter, to Ward Churchill, Cynthia McKinney, Mumia. If you missed that live call from Mumia, make sure you tune in, you tap in. Yesterday, some of you caught the piece we did on Malcolm with Peter Goldman and Paul Lee. And I said, man, listen, man, you know, this week is an important week because of the fact that if you missed the morning show, if you missed the Remix morning show, one of the things I talked about was the fact that November 20th marked the 7-year murder anniversary or commemoration of Akai Gurley up in New York. The 21st of November was the 15-year commemoration of the murder and assassination of 92-year-old Katherine Johnson right here in Atlanta. Yesterday, the 22nd, was the anniversary of the murder and assassination of 12-year-old Tamir Rice. And you all can remember that we had Tamir Rice's mother on the platform on his birthday this past June. And on the 25th is the 15-year commemoration of the cold-blooded murder of Sean Bell up in New York. And to top all that off, it is a time of remembrance of slaughter here in America. This Thursday, folks will be commemorating the slaughter of many natives, which is celebrated nationally, even amongst some of those who are oppressed. And, you know, they call it Thanksgiving Day, but it is a commemoration day as well. So I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news. I said, listen, man, we have some victories and we got to talk about the victories sometime because of the fact that we get overwhelmed and we get battle fatigue. And folks would be like, man, you know, I ain't nobody doing nothing. And then some of the young folks talking about, you know, I am not my grandparents. And most of the people that say they are not their grandparents are straight up punks because of the fact that if your grandparents was like my grandparents, then I know damn well you ain't my grandparents. So with that in mind, I wanted to invite a longtime comrade. When I first moved to Atlanta, I moved to Atlanta in 2014. And one of the first people that I worked with hitting the ground running on the organizing tip was this brother here. We organized around for the release of Kamal Siddiqui, a political prisoner. If you're not familiar with Kamal Siddiqui, we had his daughter Kasise on Renegade Culture some months back. So definitely check up and see who Kamal Siddiqui is. He's actually a political prisoner here in Georgia, and him and Assata Shakur have the same child. He has a child by Assata Shakur, amongst other things. So definitely you got to do your research. We're not giving you everything. But we worked on that particular campaign. I think that was our first big thing. he was and still is a professor over at Georgia State. He would have his students come out to our Feed the People program, in which we had at night, and he would give them credit for coming out. And I met many young comrades who came out through our program and through our connection. He would also invite me to speak at Georgia State to his students, and it was a wonderful experience. And throughout the years, we had our bumps and bruises, because that's what happens when you comrades. They say steel sharpen steel, like man sharpen man. But the reality is, I respect this man and I respect his work, and I felt it absolutely necessary and imperative for him to come on today. He has a book that should be in everybody's library. If you don't have it, then after today, you should be getting it. It is called We Will Shoot Back. And it's the history of armed resistance in Mississippi. I know I'm jacking up the title, but bear with me, I'm an old man. Aside from that, he's a professor again in the Black Studies, African Studies Department at Georgia State. I want to welcome to you to the platform today for the first time, Dr. Akinyele Umoja.
Hey, free the land, Kalonji. I'm gonna correct you a little bit. You've been here longer than 2014, bro.
I meant 2004. See, that's how you know I'm old, right?
I said, man, that brother been here longer than 7 years.
Man, listen, I'm glad
I know you
that.
for about 20 years.
Listen, in my head, I said one thing, but my mouth said something else.
Right.
That's been my history.
No, we've known each other for a long time and worked together on a whole lot of stuff. And I always say, in terms of the Troy Davis, in terms of our community, you led the community on that fight of protesting his killing. So there were some things we worked together, some things I followed your leadership on, and I just want to salute that and salute your energy and your power here in the city and around the country.
Hey, brother, that is I'm grateful for those words, because oftentimes we hear those words at the janazas and the funerals.
Right.
We hear none of that while we breathing. So I appreciate that.
And then we regret. I wish that I told that brother back then.
Yeah. You know how we do that. That's and next funeral, same thing. It's just how it goes. But I failed to mention that you're also one of the founding members of NAPO, New African People's Organization, and also a co-founder of the Malcolm X Grassroots Organization. So I wanted to clarify that for folks in the chat that don't know. So how you feeling? Let's start with that.
Man, I feel good. It's a lot of crazy stuff going on. We're in this season that genocide is being celebrated. But at the same time, I'm blessed. My family, my children, my grandchildren, my wife, my mother's 94. I see comrades still struggling, still rumbling. And so, I'm uplifted by that, in face of all the negativity and all the oppression. We still continue to struggle. We still continue to fight. So I'm doing well. I'm still African in the United States and an African in this world that's dominated by imperialism. But we still rumbling. We ain't gave up nothing. We still fighting. I was thinking about you talked about the resistance in spite of the oppression. I think a lot of us miss that when Africans, enslaved Africans, the captive Africans were first brought here in 1526. We hooked up with the indigenous people and we ran the Spanish off, which is why Spanish aren't in Georgia or South Carolina. And so, I like you said, we got to remember the victories. And I oftentimes tell my students, folks like to begin our history on this in North America at 1619, but I begin it with that 1526.
Right.
Because it begins us with a victory here. And, that's how I tend to want to look at it. We got to think about our resistance and we got to think about our victory. So I'm in 100% agreement with you on that.
No doubt. Now, I want to point out too, just for folks, when he said we ran the Spanish off, he's talking about the Spaniards. He's talking about about the slave masters. These,
Right.
they was crackers too. They just had a different language. So
right. We ain't talking about our Venezuelan or Cuban or Mexican brothers and sisters. We're talking about Spanish from Spain, like
No
you
doubt.
said, the Spaniards,
No
the
doubt.
Spanish settlers who were just like these people who spoke English who were settlers.
No
That's
doubt.
what we're talking about.
And it's important because of the fact that I think they forget each colony only focuses on their colonizer. You know what I mean? So, even for us, quote unquote, free-minded Africans, you know what I mean? When we hear a brother from Brazil speaking Portuguese and he's darker than you, or we hear a brother from Cuba speaking Spanish and he's dark, so on and so forth, we're looking like, man, that's a different type of, like my uncle said, that's a different type of nigga right there.
Hey, one of my funniest experiences is I think it was maybe the first time I was in Cuba, and my wife and I were walking down the street, and a Cuban woman stops us and she's asking me information. My Spanish is not good at all, and so I'm saying, "No habla español," and she looked at me like, "You're Cuban and you don't speak Spanish." So, we could be from any of these places you mentioned, right? Mexico, even Colombia. You mentioned Ajamu Baraka. I know he'd be down there in Colombia, and with a very large African population. And so most of the places I've been in Western Hemisphere, we are.
No doubt. We've been, some of the places we were indigenous, and some places we were dropped off along the way.
No doubt.
So yeah. But definitely, again, appreciate you coming on. And pointing out that the history of resistance, as Gil Scott would say, it ain't no new thing. You know what I'm saying? I wanna talk about Mississippi in particular, because of the fact that I don't think that for myself, coming from up north, as they say, to this very day, there are certain states that make my blood curl, and there are certain states where, like you always hear me say, I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, so on and so forth, right? There were certain projects when I went to school, right? When I was in school, certain projects, when I knew certain people were from certain projects, I looked at them as like veterans and war heroes. They got a certain level of respect because of the fact, like, damn, I live in the projects, but you live in some shit. So, right. So I looked at them in a different light, and I respected them because of the fact, I'm like, man, you really have to walk through this battlefield on a regular. And we're talking about real battlefields. I'm not talking about no made up stuff. But when you talk about Mississippi, when you talk about the blood on the leaves and the roots and the hanging trees, and you talk about Alabama, and you talk about Louisiana and Tennessee, places like that, you're talking about a different world. Mississippi in particular, to me, Alabama is Alabama. That's a whole different cracker. But Mississippi, it's that swamp land, and that, you know what I'm saying, it's the Delta, the whole nine. So
the Georgia crack ain't nothing to sneeze at either.
Oh yeah, the Georgia crack. Yeah, we just got comfortable because we got this little
right.
Our colony's cute.
Atlanta,
yeah,
right.
Our colony is stylish, but
right.
But for those folks coming up out of there, man, it's a whole different world. Talk to us about the climate in Mississippi. Let's say dating back as far as you can, and some of the those who resisted either in arms or by any means.
Man, when we think about Mississippi, we got to remember that there was a black majority in Mississippi coming out of slavery. So when the Civil War ends, there's a black majority there. We in the majority, and just like South Africa, just like Zimbabwe, when which for those who didn't know, for black majority places, and that where you have white settlers, the white settlers are going to come down on you hard with repression. They're also going to use divide and conquer tactics, right? But they're going to terrorize it. So when when we think about Mississippi, go to a place like Chicago, a good percentage of the Black population in Chicago have roots in Mississippi because of the terrorism there, because of what was a what we call an apartheid system or segregation was there. Mississippi and Georgia, and which is why we don't want to leave Georgia off the hook. They led the country in lynchings. So that period of time after what historians call Reconstruction, from the 1870s through like I always take it to the 1950s. Lynching of Black people was common. And when we say lynching, we call some of the killings of our people today by police lynchings in a way they are, but they were more than just killing Black people. They were celebrations of killing Black people. They were like social events where the entire family would come out. I'm talking about the white family, and they would do rituals with our bodies as they dismembered us. So those things were common in Mississippi. They were common in Georgia. They were common in Alabama, all those places you mentioned. So that type of terror existed for Black people, but still in the midst of all of that, you had some Black people who fought back. My father was a sharecropper, and he was a sharecropper in the Mississippi Delta. One of the stories I tell in the book is how my father saw he saw a Black body hanging from the water tower when he was a child or when he was a young man. And my grandfather grabbed his gun. I can't remember if it was a rifle or shotgun. He was going to shoot the first white man he saw. And the family tackled my grandfather and disarmed him, thinking it was going to mean retaliation would come against the entire family. That let me know that there were people who were willing to fight these folks, and there were Black people who fought off lynchers during that time. Some there was one case in the 1950s, a brother by the name of Eddie Noel, and he was an expert sharpshooter, and he had a conflict with a white man, kills a white man. He knows they're coming for him. He goes off into the woods, and he's just picking people off in the woods in Holmes County, Mississippi. They end up negotiating with him, and he's sent to a mental institution as opposed to sent to prison. Now, there's a backstory to this. I didn't put the backstory in the book because I didn't get corroboration on it. But the backstory to it is this brother had white parentage too. And one of his relatives was a former governor of Mississippi. So they worked out some sort of deal. They put him in a crazy house, and then he escapes and lives in Chicago. There's a similar case to that in Georgia. Many of us know about the 1906 racial massacre here in Georgia, where a lot of times we don't tell that history of Black. We just talk about us being killed. But the area that's around Carver High now, there was a Black community during that time called Brownsville. And after the first day of the massacre, Black people were being killed downtown. The second day, we didn't go downtown, and the mobs tried to come to our neighborhoods, and we were picking folks off. Black people were armed to protect themselves. And there was actually a white cop who led a posse into that neighborhood. If you heard of Price Middle School, Luther Price, who was the first Black postmaster in Atlanta, he had an arsenal, and he distributed his weapons to his neighbors. And so when they came in at night, Black people shot out the street lights, and they started picking them off. They killed a white cop, and the next day they came back with a tank and the National Guard, and they arrested Black folks and marched 127 Black men downtown. There was one brother who was convicted. I can't remember the brother's name. I have to apologize. He was convicted, but again, and I know some people might not like this, but I'm just telling the story. His grandfather was an Irish cop who helped him escape from Milledgeville prison. The brother escaped, went to Alabama, and then lived the rest of his life in Chicago. We only know that story because the brother's grandchildren came to the centennial the racial massacre and told us the story. No, none of the historians knew. And
Wow.
so, but I know I went far afield from Mississippi, but
No,
I
no,
just want
no,
to
no. We
talk
need all
about
that.
the terrorism we faced. And on the other hand, we fought back even when it wasn't a team, even when we didn't have organizations or networks, individual Black people fought back. But as that case was in Atlanta, you did have networks of Black people. As I mentioned, you had this brother who had resources, had guns, and distributed it throughout his neighbors. The thing that concerns me the most now, Brother Kalonji, is, or I should say Baba Kalonji, like you said, you ain't no spring chicken no more. But Baba Kalonji, the thing that concerns me the most is, I believe in the time I wrote about in the book, in the time that we faced this terror, I think there were more consciousness of the necessity of networks between ourselves, and I don't see that right now. We need to start developing those networks. There's not publicly talked about on
Right.
TV or on the internet
Or
even.
YouTube. Right. Right.
Yeah, we don't blast everything we do or
Right.
don't
Tweet
parade
it.
all around. One of
Right.
the things that kind of concerns me now too is when I see us parading around with stuff and on Instagram showing us at the range and showing us training. We don't need to show them everything. We know that stuff is being monitored. And so but our ancestors did that. I totally agree with your assessment. I've been on my students in one of my classes all semesters because one of them did say, um, we're not our ancestors. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, we'll put our hands on these folks. I said, look, our ancestors did some stuff that you can't even imagine and you ain't doing now. You know
Right.
what I
Right.
mean?
And
We ain't
you
doing
won't
now.
do. Right. Right. And you
Right.
won't do. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's like you said about, and I'm glad you said about the whole showing the firearms, right? I mean, that right there, you already lost because of the fact that when you're telling them where you're keeping the stash at, you're telling them what you got, so on and so forth. Okay, so this one you got to pick off.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I hear people all the time, yeah, I keep the this by the that, and I keep this under the bed, so on and so. You broadcast it.
Mm-hmm.
So if folks come to see you, then you know what I'm saying, you already told them where everything's at. You know what I mean? You already told them how to catch it.
Dry
So
snitched on yourself.
man, it's totally dry snitching. No code. They be talking about stay on code. Ain't no code.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
And that's the thing. It's like, folks they confuse the bark with the bite. You know what I'm saying? It's cool to look like you playing the part. But at the end of the day, like Malcolm said, if you knew what a revolution was, you get out the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Because of the fact that, it's real. Like Imam Jamil said, this ain't something that you can just it's not a plaything. You just don't, when you set it off on them, you gotta, it's on now. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no, I was just kidding and I was playing. It's like, it's war. And this is what comes with war. I wanna, you talked about, there was individuals and there were collectives,
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of network. And that's one of the things that um I would dare say we had the opportunity to learn from our OGs and elders about building systems and networks. And like you said, these are the things, the only network a lot of these folks are concerned with right now is their network and their net worth on social media. You know what I'm saying? It looks good. You know what I mean? Talk to us about some of these formations, because of the fact that people hear names like the Deacons for Defense, and most people can't name one member. You know what I'm saying? They don't know who were the founding members. Can we speak a little bit on them and others, if you don't mind?
Yeah, the Deacons of Defense began in a place called Jonesboro, Louisiana. It's in northern Louisiana. And how they begin is, and I think this is important for us to realize, the the Ku Klux Klan, particularly after the federal government did the Civil Rights Act, the Ku Klux Klan in their community decided to come out and parade through the black community. Actually, they used to do that all the time. That was a common thing in Southern communities to terrorize us and to reinforce trauma. But the difference this time is they had a police escort when they came through the community, and they were still like harassing black women, harassing black men and children. And so 14 people got together, 12 of them men, two women. Out of that 12, I think they had either World War II or Korean War experience. And they decided, look, this shit got to stop. We ain't going to allow it to happen no more. So they inventoried the weapons in the black community. They also inventoried the ammunition they had available, and they got sources. And they decided they would patrol their community from then on. And that's what stopped the Klan from coming through their community. Around the same time, and one of the leaders of that, because the Deacons, like you say, we don't know their names, but they always identified a spokesperson to deal with the public, to deal with, if you gotta have a meeting with the police or with the officials or whatever, they would designate somebody. But everybody wasn't free to be talked to. Around the same time, there was a group in Louisiana, in Bogalusa, Louisiana, began on the same principle. The one in Jonesboro was the spokesperson was a brother by the name of Ernest Thomas, also known as Chili Willie in the community. Right. Okay, and in Bogalusa, they formed a group, and these two groups hooked up. The Bogalusa group got more attention because they had a significant demonstrations and a lot of national attention. And so people began to see that group down there a little bit more. It was led by a brother by the name, or their spokesperson was a brother by the name of Charles Sims, even though they had others who were noted, like Robert Hicks. Robert Hicks, his family is making a museum out of his home, and so it'll be a memorial to the Deacons there. The Deacons, again, they didn't tell you who was all their members. In fact, what I come to find out is they exaggerated their size. People thought they were bigger than what they actually were. And they would primarily identify the spokesperson, but that was pretty much it. They grew in Mississippi. The first place they grew in Mississippi was in Natchez, Mississippi, where there was a group there. Another thing I should say about the Deacons is they had a death oath. Like, if you snitch, you were gonna die.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you snitch. And so one of the things I find with them is, if you look at their COINTELPRO papers, you don't find informants inside the organization. You find people maybe outside in the perimeter of the organization who give information to the feds about them, but you don't find many Deacons. I didn't find any Deacons who were giving internal information. Usually the Deacons would recruit people they knew, people they grew up with, people they played football with, they were in a lodge with, they went to church with, some of that nature. So you couldn't just join them from off the street. In the boycotts I saw in Mississippi, you would have the Deacons, but you would have another group that I liked too. There was more younger folk, and they came to be known as the Spirit. So when you had a boycott and you had Black folks who broke the boycott, you had people who would enforce the boycott. So it'd be some consequences if the Black community says, we're not going to shop at this store, and then
That's
you decide you just want to go down there and get your favorite soda pop, then there'll be somebody meeting you when you get out that store. And then, of course, they start arresting people when that happens. So they just would have spies downtown. I'm talking about we would. And then they would meet you when you got home or come to your house that evening. And when I say that, you had the Spirit throughout the state where you had boycotts, you had people who enforced the boycott. And it's similar to in South Africa when you had people who were snitches, and they would what did they do, a necklace Y'all
Yeah,
remember the
yeah,
necklace?
yeah,
Put a
yeah,
tie around you and
yeah.
set a
Necktie.
fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we had enforcer squads in our movement. The Deacons aren't the first level though. Of course, you always had in the civil rights movement when it jumps off in Mississippi and other places too. You got self-defense group. One of the things in Alabama, people when they tell the story of Birmingham, they don't talk about after those bombings, the black community set up armed patrols. Angela Davis and Condoleezza Rice's father were in armed patrols in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963. So
Wow.
you had self-defense consciousness in our community, and of course you had Robert Williams, who was I think the thing that distinguishes Robert Williams is Robert Williams was vocal, and he said we'll meet violence against violence, which made him a hero in our community. But there were other people doing the same thing, but Robert Williams was a person who spoke publicly about this, and of course he set up something called a Black Guard in Monroe, North Carolina. Be on the lookout. We're close to finishing his final autobiography, which is called While God Lay Sleeping. And then we'll have a chapter that's just his wife telling their story, Mabel Williams, who was also involved in armed self-defense,
Wow.
telling her story. So hopefully it'll be about a year or so. I'm working on that with Sister Neb House out of Detroit, who knew the Williams, as well as John Bracey, who also knew the Williams very well. I'm probably the youngest one, if you could believe it, Kalonji, working on the team, and the
Okay.
one who probably knew them the least. But the family asked me to participate on this project. But it's a long tradition. So again, when people talk about I'm not my ancestors, you got the Deacons, you got Robert Williams, and even prior to that, just you got more informal groups of Black folks who defended their communities, who went toe to toe with the Klan and defeated the Klan. My favorite story from my book is an 89-year-old grandmother who, and you mentioned Imam Jamil earlier. Imam Jamil's older brother Ed told me this story. Him and a sister out of Mississippi, and told me the story of this 89-year-old grandmother in Tallahatchie County, which is the county where Emmett Till was lynched.
Right.
And this grandmother, after the community had been attacked by the Klan for Black people going out to register to vote, she decided the next week when they went again, and the Klan came back, they had Black folks lined on both sides of the road with shotguns and rifles. The Klan get the hell out of there when they see that, but she knows they're coming at night. And
Right.
so she gets her children and grandchildren. They send them out to the cotton fields and wait for the night riders. Then she gets the nonviolent people and get their guns and say, y'all got to be where we are tonight. And they put them out in the cotton fields. And then she's in our house. And this is the thing that Ed thought was real funny. She's in the house making Molotov cocktails, 89-year-old grandmother, putting gas in the bottles and the dry rag and
Right
getting
on.
ready. And so when
Yeah.
the night riders come back, led by the local sheriff, she's the one that throws the Molotov cocktail. And again, they get
She
out of there.
89.
Yeah, 89 years old. So again, you talk about a comrade,
Right.
ain't no age and no gender limit on that, right?
Man.
So
Ain't no movement dropouts either. That's
right,
right.
exactly. And so we had these soldiers, many whose names we don't know
That's right.
in our community. We had these traditions, and shoot, we pray that these ancestors are in our blood. We pray that
Yeah.
we can be inspired by them, and they can come back and live and direct us in this fight we got to do against some serious times. We got we have communities out there. We think about that 70 million people in the United States voted for Donald Trump. Now, they were conscious about what type of agenda they were voting for, right? And so
Yeah.
when we see, we saw what happened on January the 6th in this country and the type of forces that exist out there, when we see some of these organizations like the Proud Boys or whatever, that exists. Or when we see what happened to our brother Ahmaud Arbery, right? Then we know that these forces are organized out there. It's time for us to make sure that we're organized, to make sure that our folks can pray in church in peace.
That's right.
You know, that our elders, our children are protected, things of that nature. We got to make sure that happens. We got to be our ancestors and even more in face of what we got to deal with. We got to call upon Robert Williams and uh,
Queen Mother Moore and
Queen
all
Mother
these folks.
Moore. Oh
Yeah,
my God, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that was another fighter. She used to always love to tell the story about when they weren't going to allow Marcus Garvey to speak in New Orleans,
Yeah, yeah.
and then she said that folks came to the meeting anyway,
That's
and
right.
then when the police chief and the mayor tells Garvey to go tell people that he can't speak, and he said, "Brothers and sisters, I'm sorry to say I can't speak tonight." And then people pull their guns out. Queen Mother Moore said she had two guns. Pull one, a derringer out her breast, and another gun out her purse. And she said
Yeah,
they chanted, "Speak, Garvey, speak." And
that's
the
right.
police stepped back. The
Oh yeah.
mayor stepped back, and Garvey gave his address. Brothers and sisters, as I was saying, and
As I
went
was
right
saying,
ahead.
yes,
Yeah, so
yes, yes.
I met Queen Mother Moore when I was 18. You can
Man.
believe it, Kalonji. I was 18. I was thin with an afro. And
I saw some old pictures, man. You know what I'm saying?
and you know, she told that story every place she went. And I think that was one of the things she was most proud of her life, that they were able to back these settlers down on that day, and Garvey was able to give his address.
Now I'm gonna say this because of the fact that I wouldn't say you read my mind, because of the fact that I definitely was gonna we're gonna definitely have to revisit Robert Williams. That's absolutely necessary because his role. We got some time, right? We good?
Yeah. I'm
Okay,
good.
cool. But we also I need you to because I've been, I talked to our OG, Muhammad Ahmed, formerly Max Stanford,
Yeah,
and he had plenty of Queen Mother Moore stories. You know
right,
what I'm saying?
right.
So I would like you to talk about the importance of Queen Mother Moore, because of the fact that I think that folks like Queen Mother Moore in particular, and I'd say Robert Williams as well, and I would even say Max Stanford
Hmm.
are like folklore to a
Right.
lot of these new folks. And I had the opportunity to interview
Yeah,
Muhammad
I heard that.
Ahmed
That
and
was
Max
pretty
Stanford.
good interview. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that. Yeah.
that was like about 10 years ago or so, 12 years
Yeah,
ago,
it's a
something like
trip
that.
how time flies.
Yeah, but please talk to us about the importance of Queen Mother Moore and who Queen Mother Moore was and is to our movement.
You know, it's kind of deep because I associate Queen Mother Moore when I first getting involved. You know, I graduated from high school and I joined Muhammad Ahmed Defense Committee,
Hmm.
who was,
Wow,
he was part of the Revolutionary Action Movement.
no
And
doubt.
so when I joined the group, and we're trying to get this brother out of prison who's on trial rather, who J. Edgar Hoover had designated as most dangerous man in America at that time. He was an associate of Malcolm's. But anyway, so I'm just a young kid, graduated from high school, Compton, California, and they asked me, had I heard of Queen Mother Moore? And you know, the type of education we get, I hadn't heard of Queen Mother Moore, and I hadn't done a lot of reading and studying at that time. And she was mostly on the East Coast, and this was in LA. And I was assigned to go to this event. And I didn't know who this lady was, who she was at that time. For your audience who don't know, Queen Mother Moore, and at that time was an elder in our movement. She was in her 70s. She had belonged to the Marcus Garvey movement, and when she was in the South, then she moved to New York City, where she was involved in the Communist Party. And don't be frightened by the fact she was in the Communist Party. That was where a lot of our elders during that period of time went, particularly when the Garvey movement declined, and they fought for people around housing. They fought with people around their rent. They fought with people around labor issues. They fought to defend the Scottsboro boys who were being lynched, legally lynched in the court system during that time. She joined that organization, particularly because they were talking about Black self-determination during that time. And but then when they stopped talking about it, she left, and she formed her own group, a group of Black women who fought against what they call the legal lynching of Black people. But they're the first organization really since the 1890s to really push the concept of reparations. And so we consider Queen Mother Moore the modern day mother of the reparations movement, because she advocated that real strong back in the 1950s and 60s. And so she convinces people like the Nation of Islam to put reparations, a demand for compensation to our people for unpaid labor. They put that in what we want and what we believe. She convinced, when we talk about the Republic of New Africa, Baba Amari Obadeli and his brother Milton Henry Gaidi Obadeli, she convinces them around reparations. She pushes it to Malcolm. She pushes it, those of us who are in the Yoruba community, Osurjaman Adafume, who started Oyatunji village. She pushed reparations to him. So there were a lot of people in that Black Power era who began to talk about reparations with her advocacy. So I meet this sister, and Queen Mother Moore is there during that time when Brother Muhammad's incarcerated. We're trying to raise money for a legal defense for him. She's out there speaking at colleges and other places, and all her honorariums went to his legal defense. And so I got to meet her, spend time with her, travel with her. Oftentimes kid people, and I said, Queen Mother Moore wasn't what we would today call a feminist. She was like, I remember, I'm a young man. She built my ego up, and I'll be on security or something. She said, "Look at this fine brother here. He need to have 9 wives."
I heard some stories from Max Stanford as well, from Muhammad Ahmed.
Yeah. So, but she was
that,
clearly a soldier.
Right on.
Who promoted the concept of reparations. So in New York, I know where they have their reparations bill now. I think it's called, it was put forth by State Representative Charles Barron. It's called the Queen Mother Moore Reparations Bill.
Right
and
on.
so she got to be remembered in that way. And our children should know who she is. There's actually a young sister working on a biography, Queen Mother Moore, now, and hopefully it'll be a year or two out. But we need more than these books, and of course I write books, but we need like comic books. We need like films. We need Brother Kalonji, Baba Kalonji, when I first met you, you were doing spoken word. I don't know if you're still doing spoken word, but we need raps, and we need make this culture alive and this history live to bring to our youth, and for them to take it to even higher level.
Hey, we got Baba Balogun, who's in the chat right now. He's working on a lot of that type stuff, man, as far as this Black sci-fi and all that. Of course, he's the African martial arts and urban survival preparedness.
That Balogun. Okay, yeah.
One of the same.
Yeah.
I mean, Balogun has close to 40 books out, if not 40. So
well, I like
definitely.
the piece y'all did with Wise Intelligence, that video.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Folks don't know about that. That was one of our co-productions with Diaspora Black and Wise Intelligence. What he's talking about. If you folks out there, that's something that Balogun and I co-produced, directed, and all that. But yeah, definitely. Man, I mean,
and that's what I'm talking about. Books are fine, and again, I write books, but we got to be very creative in terms of taking this culture to our people, which I know is something that you believe in, something you practice.
Yeah, and it's important, and I'm glad you saying that, because of the fact that we definitely got to have creative resistance. We can't, a lot of times, we get the holier than thou attitude, and it's like, oh, this person don't know this, or they don't know about that, or they said this and all that, which is it's folly, it's child's play, because of the fact that when you're serious about our people's movement and our liberation struggle. When you look at some of the lives of some of these people you talk about, you know what I mean? They didn't just come up out of the intellectual halls. You know, many of them come from the pool halls and the sidewalks. You know, there's several people that I know personally. When I met them, uh, let's just say you wouldn't know their background. You know what I'm saying? By what they do now and the work that they do. So, and I was telling folks earlier today, man, it was necessary for there to be a Detroit Red in order to make a Malcolm X.
No doubt. No
You
doubt.
know what I'm saying? And we gloss over that part. We just like, you know, Malcolm was shining Black Prince, but we would have hated him if we knew him in his earlier stages.
No
We've
doubt.
been trying to catch him and put him in the trunk. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you know, so like Kwame Ture say, man, we got to give our people a chance, give them an opportunity, because a lot of times, you know, many of the, you know, the scholars and the writers, you know, they're not going to change that pen in for that AK. You know what I'm saying? But
you know, that's some good word. We got to give them a chance, or our people won't have a chance. Period. None of us will have a chance, because that's where our only salvation. That's where the true victory is going to lie. When the Detroit Reds, you know, pick up the word. You think about it, as to the extent that the Nation of Islam was as powerful as it was during the 1960s, it was because this young brother had been empowered and was allowed to take whatever he had learned as a Detroit Red and build it up to a certain level where he could go talk to people on the street, and he could talk to people in the university campuses, right? So we need that same ability today, and we got it. When we say we have to struggle by any means necessary, that applies to the arts.
That's right.
And that applies to media, and that applies to being able to talk to different groups of our people. And so, yeah, now I'm total agreement with you on that.
Right on. And don't get it twisted. When Baba AK, and we call him Baba AK for it's a dual purpose. But anyway,
actually, I like Baba AK better than I like Dr. Umoja. I tell people,
hey man, we're cool. You on Riot started TV,
right?
And for folks that don't know, we don't start riots, we start rebellions. The riot started peace. That came from the state saying, you know, oh, that's the riot starter right there. You know what I'm saying?
I love it.
Yeah, so that's a play on words. Don't get it twisted. We clear. But my point is, when we talk about the arts and the action, we look at folks like Gil Scott Heron, and we look at our comrade and OG Bilal Sunni Ali, who is an example of what an artist is supposed to do. It's not just about, you know, you play your flute and that's it. You know what I'm saying? You can play your flute, and if you have to, you shoot. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, there's no neutrals in war. When if you join the U.S. military, I don't care if your job is to mop the mess hall every day. You still have to go through basic training and learn how to fight, because of the fact that in war they ain't gonna be like, oh no, he cool, he just work in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? You know, you got to be prepared. So we got to keep that in mind, because of the fact that oftentimes people think it's either or. You know, a movement is just that. It is a movement. It's not these guys right here designated to fight, and we just sit back and say, y'all go ahead and do your thing. Like you said earlier about the 89-year-old elder, when you was talking about how even the civil rights folks, there was a time they had to get those weapons. They had to up them things. You know what I'm saying? So we got to be clear about that. You know,
it was more of that happening than the historians tell us, right? That people were non-violent doing at a certain meeting, but they might be the one doing security with a gun on the other one another day. You know, especially if you're helping people register to vote, and then they're feeding you, you can't expect them to go be out all night doing watch duty. So you might be registering people to vote in the daytime, but you're doing armed security and on patrol in the evening, and that happened more than not.
And I'm glad you mentioned, you mentioned voting, and then I want to touch on Robert Williams, but I want to address the whole: our people died for the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I want you to summarize and give us an analysis as far as what that means, because of the fact that people are misunderstanding that, and they're thinking it's just like, okay, we just casting the ballot and we hoping that we get one cracker over the other. You know what I'm saying? A Dixiecrat or a Democrat. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
So, can you touch on that?
I heard a speech one time where Malcolm says, and it was another play on ballot or bullet, and he talked about just because comparing the ballot or the bullet. He said you don't just use your ballot like you use your gun. You just shoot all the damn time, but you pick a target. You try to be strategic and figure out what you want and how does this benefit you. And so when we say our people fought for the right to vote, they did, but then they didn't fight for us to be foolish.
Right.
We got to be strategic and figure out how electoral politics can be useful for us, and then don't participate in stuff that won't be useful, but not just sheepishly because they put this person or that person in front of us run to the polls. We
Right.
have to have a strategy behind it and know how it benefits us. More importantly, we need to have an agenda that benefits us, right?
That's right.
And if we're going to participate in electoral politics to a certain level, we need to have an agenda and make sure that politicians we vote for follow that agenda. If not, don't vote for them. And so I think example of what Chokwe Lumumba was able to do in Mississippi and Jackson was probably one of the best examples of that. And that's an example we need to build on at this particular time. And so we just need to be strategic about it, and we need to be thoughtful. But I think it's going to come, just as we talked about other elements of our existence in terms of self-defense. It's going to take communities coming together and developing a process to develop an agenda, a platform, and to figure out what we want as a people, as opposed to just being played and manipulated by the two capitalist parties.
No doubt. So ultimately, it's about it's a question of power, and the ultimate goal being self-determination.
That's it right there. Self-determination, and ultimately, as you said, power, so we could transform the systems we live in, because we know the systems we live in, the economic, the constitutional system, none of that benefits us. We need to create something that benefits us as a people, and that's going to ensure that our children, I know you said you're a grandfather now, that our children have just as much potential, if not more potential than more ability to fulfill their potentials than anybody else in society. So when I visit places like Cuba, and I see young people with limited resources able to practice medicine, our children, oftentimes coming from poor communities, don't have a society, a government, or state that's going to invest in them to reach their full potentials. That's what we want. But to have that type of vision, most of our people can't even see that alternative. We got to be able to show that alternative, that there's a different way to live than what this system of oppression gives us. We think that this is the best system in the world. This is the only way we could do things. And, they kind of got us up here. And so we got to really struggle to help our people to see a different reality.
No doubt. We high tech and advanced slaves.
Most definitely.
Yeah, we are prominent Negroes over here.
Yeah.
Speaking of Negroes with guns,
Mm-hmm.
Robert Williams. What is the importance of Robert Williams? Because of the fact that I think people, they mentioned Robert Williams in passing as if, again, like he was just a cat with a gun and said, Negroes get guns. But how important was he to the movement? Because of the fact that I would say a lot like Muhammad Ahmed, as far as Max Stanford, traveling around, organizing in different formations. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, Robert Williams is, I mentioned before, he's the first person during that 1950s, 60s to openly come out and say, we'll meet violence with violence, that we will fight against our oppressors. Actually, when he said that, he was suspended by the NAACP and they took his post from him. But made him popular in the hood.
Right.
Made him popular in the pool hall. Made
No
him
doubt.
popular on the streets. So there were even factions of the NAACP at that time who became more like Robert Williams chapters of the NAACP, branches of the NAACP. So he had massive support on the street from our people inside the NAACP and others. Now, one of the things people also missed is during that time, Malcolm's in the Nation of Islam. So it's people like Malcolm who are raising money to send Robert Williams and his crew in Monroe, North Carolina to fight against the Klan. They're buying guns. We talk about the great John Henry Clark, the historian, was raising money, not only raising money, but traveling with people to North Carolina to bring him and his community supplies, bring them arms, bring them ammunition. So it was a network of people all over the country. Queen Mother Moore was a part of that network. And it was even some white folks who were part of that network who raised money for Robert Williams. Robert Williams, if the audience doesn't know, in 1961, he was set up on some charges. He left the country, goes to Canada. And one of the things you'll see in his book that's going to come out is the Cubans. And it's very clear to me that Fidel Castro had to be involved in this on some level because it was a wife of what's the brother's name? Juan Almeida, who was one of the black men who was a part of Cuba, of Fidel Castro's crew when they seized power in 1959. His wife actually helps in the escape of Robert Williams from Canada to get him to Cuba during that particular time. So he was internationally recognized. Heads of state knew who the hell he was, as they knew who Malcolm was during that time. And so he lives in Cuba, and in Cuba, he was allowed to set up a radio program called Radio Free Dixie. I guess it was like the Riot Starter, and they broadcast into the United States. He also had a newsletter that he, his wife, and a sister by the name of Ethel Johnson started in North Carolina. They started producing a newsletter in Cuba and sending it to the United States. And there were people in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee reading and distributing it. People like Max Stanford and others reading it and distributing it. So it was making an impact in the movement, even though he's in exile in Cuba. At some point, he decides to move to China in 1966, I believe. And again, while he's in China, and even before he goes to China, when there are things going on like the bombing of the church in Birmingham, he gets Mao Zedong and other international leaders to condemn what's happening in the United States. There were some civil rights leaders who were saying, we don't want Mao's help. And, they were determining who their friends and enemies were based upon what the master told them. But Robert Williams was able to get international support for our people. At some point, he always actually wanted to come back to the United States and continue to struggle here. And he was considered a leader of the movement by, again, people like Max Stanford and Revolutionary Action Movement. Even prior to the RNA, there was another group who set up a provisional government for Black people, and they declared him president of their movement. And then when the Republic of New Africa was started in 1968, he was elected president of their movement. He returns home to the United States. For a while, he plays that role in the RNA, but then he felt the movement was so infiltrated at that time that it would not be successful. And so he stepped down as president, but he was always active in human rights for our people. He lived in Baldwin, Michigan, and continued to fight for human rights for our people there in Michigan. And I actually had the blessing of meeting him in Atlanta. I mean, I'm a little young guy. I met him. He spoke at the U.S.-China Friendship Association, people trying to normalize relations between the United States and China, but gave a very powerful speech. I mean, Kalonji, he might have sounded like you then. I'm serious. He
Man,
gave
listen.
a very powerful speech at that particular time. So his politics didn't change. So that was one of the things I was glad to work on this book, because I don't want people to think, okay, the brother came back, he sold out, he quieted down, and they left him alone. That's not the case. He was still vocal, speaking out on issues of our people and organizing on behalf of our people. And his wife, Mabel, did also. And so that's why I was glad we were able to include her in this book as well. Mabel died in 2014, and she continued to speak on issues. We had her to Atlanta a couple of times to speak before she passed, and when her health was still good.
Wow.
Robert died in 1996. I should add.
Man, that is man. I mean, you just rejuvenated me, for lack of better words, because I think it's that's medicine that's needed. And I'm also thinking about 1961. That was a cold year. I mean, you talking about the assassination of Patrice Lumumba,
Exactly.
the death of Frantz Fanon, Robert Williams set up. You know what I'm saying? It's just so much going on. That climate, it was like the entryway to what was to come. You know what I mean?
They were pretty busy, and we were busy too.
Oh yeah, without a doubt,
busy.
without a doubt. You know what I mean? So that was a pivotal moment in history. With all that you've researched and you studied, you talked about several different things. What was the what piece of that really lit your fire? What was the most the greatest find that you discovered while working on that particular project?
Oh, on the Williams or on
just period, as far as
man. Woo. And I mentioned a couple of them. Of course, it was the find out about the grandmother. But here's another piece. Now, this took me a long time to track down. There was I met a brother. I had heard some stories that there were some people who responded to some of the people committing atrocities against our people in Mississippi. And so somebody made a connection with me, and I thought this brother knew about it. And so I was in his house, and I was recording it with a tape recorder. And I asked him a question. He asked me to turn my tape recorder off. And then he told me, look, the questions I wanted to answer, I could meet him outside of his house, no tape recorder, and I could ask him some questions, and I could write them down or just try to memorize them. So he told me that in 1969, some of the members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee met in Atlanta, and they decided they had had enough with the Emmett Tills. They were all in that generation where they were Emmett Till's age anymore. And they were tired of the Swerner, Goodman, and Cheney, that they wanted to start to retaliate against some of these folks. And so he said some felt they needed to go get military training. And there was another group who thought that they knew everything they needed to know at that time. So he told me that he would only tell me two names, Ralph Featherstone and Che Payne.
Wow.
And Ralph Featherstone I knew was a brother who was from DC. He was a school teacher. He set up the Freedom Schools, and we know that he was headed to the trial of Imam Jamil, him and brother Che Payne, and their car explodes and they die. Okay, but so that's all he would tell me. He told me the story in the 90s, and I couldn't find the connection. He said they also he told me that they shot somebody who was involved in the Emmett Till lynching, and so I couldn't find anything during that period of time. And I happened to be researching something else, and then the stuff all popped up. I got the evidence in the surveillance files of the state of Mississippi. I found that it was another part of the state that someone had the white folks in a desegregation campaign had blew up a movement office. And then the next day, within 24 hours, the county courthouse in that community exploded, and then 5 minutes later, a white man who the black community believed had been involved in the Emmett Till lynching was shot. He survived the shooting, but he was shot. And then let me see. The Ralph Featherstone Park connected because they said Ralph Featherstone had been seen in the city that night. And I didn't put this part in the book but I'll say this here. There was someone who told me that a reason they didn't catch Ralph Featherstone was that somebody had a crop dusting plane, flew him in, him and his crew did what they had to do, and then he left. Wow. They arrested some other people for it, but they were released for lack of evidence. But that was, to me, it took me a long time to research that, but all the pieces kind of fit together in terms of that story. And then I've had some people in Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee who might have knew something about it saying, brother, how'd you find that stuff out? How'd you find that stuff out?
You worked. You knew where to go.
Yeah, and some of it's just our intuition, and that's one of the things I think that might separate some of us who've been in the movement,
that's right,
who do this research is we think similar to the people we're studying. Yeah. So
certain things are like what would appear to be, what do you call that? Almost like common sense or commonality. Exactly. Okay.
Whereas I've read stuff where some historians, oh no, I know they weren't thinking about this. Oh yeah, we were.
Yeah. You sit back looking at them like, yeah, okay. But that's the beautiful thing, man. It's like it's beautiful just hearing, being blessed to organize with so many different individuals who come from different eras and so on and so forth. And you almost wish that all the stories could be told. Mm-hmm. But certain things, just, you know what I'm saying? Certain things just won't be told. No not doubt. On these mediums. How about that?
No doubt.
Yeah, but we definitely as we dwell in this current climate with the Ahmaud Arbery's, with the Jacob Blakes, you know what I mean? You mentioned earlier about so people can go to church in peace. Our people, like King said, they have a 6-day memory, and of course it's much shorter now. But my mind, when you said sit in the church, instantly I'm thinking about the Birmingham situation with the 4 little girls. But then we got to remember, just as of late, the situation in South Carolina with the white boy who shot. So it's not a thing of the past, and it's like we've been fed this whole what do you call this, post-racial America crap, and then we acting like we're surprised when Ahmaud Arbery is hunted down and murdered for jogging. We act like we're surprised when 12-year-old Tamir Rice is shot down on the playground. You know what I mean? We act like we surprised when George Floyd, when this cracker literally has his knee on his neck for 9 minutes, and the most that we can do is just like during the times of the actual lynchings, is to sit back and wish he get off and yell and scream, but not be bold enough to take a brick and bust his goddamn head, as my grandfather would say. You know what I'm saying? That's the part that folks are missing when you talk about we're not our ancestors and we're not our grandparents.
We're not connecting the dots.
That's right.
We're not connecting the dots. And I think it's, folks don't want to believe.
That's right.
Because if you actually focus on the reality, then you got to do something about it, right? And so I think that's, it's a form of wanting to be in the matrix. You wanted to be connected and hoping that shit is just going to go away. And it ain't going away. It's getting worse.
Oh, yeah.
We have to organize. There's no other choice.
Right on, brother.
No other option.
And that is a perfect way to sum it up. Organize.
Kwame Ture used to say.
Man, listen. And I don't know, are there any words you want to leave the
No, just keep on doing what you're doing. You know, keep on promoting this, giving people a voice, giving some of us who might not get other venues where we could come and talk about the things you're gonna ask us about.
Amen.
Uh, you know, some people don't want to hear this,
Right
and
on.
so thanks for allowing me to speak openly, honestly, and to share this history and this perspective that comes from our ancestors and some of our elders and some of our comrades.
Amen. It's,
Mhm.
it's my responsibility and it's our responsibility.
Yeah,
We're not hoarding knowledge. We're not selling dreams over here. You know what I'm saying?
I should say also that, you know, folks, there's petitions circulating around Sundiata Acoli,
Yes.
petitions circulating around Dr. Matulu Shakur. Let's support both of those efforts to get these elders home so they could spend their really, I mean, just to be clear, their last days with us
No doubt.
out here for us to love them on them and to show them the proper love and respect that they deserve as
No
freedom
doubt.
fighters for our people.
Imam Jamil, you know,
Ashe.
you mentioned Ed Brown, who
Hmm.
you know, who I was grateful to work with before he transitioned.
No
You know what
doubt.
I'm saying? You
Ed
know,
Brown, I always say, was the brother of the year.
yeah, yeah.
He showed more loyalty than any brother I know to
Any
his
brother,
brother. Yeah,
any
any
brother.
brother I know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't say I showed my brother. I love my brother, and I
That's right.
did the best I could for my brother. But Ed surpassed all of us as brothers for our brothers.
Hey, what they
Hmm.
say? Facts. That's facts right there.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? And you weren't gonna play when it came to Imam Jamil either. You gonna get the proper right. It's funny, real funny story, man. One time, uh, I had to sit in. Um, there was a press situation where we did some type of rally, whatever, and Fox wanted to interview somebody from the community, and uh, Ed couldn't make it, so the imam asked me to do the interview, right? So I'm in front of the Islamic Center, and I can't think of this Mexican cat who's on Fox 5 Atlanta. I can't think of George something. I can't think his name. But anyway, you know, he while they miking me up, he's like, yeah, you know, I was down with the Mexican Revolution, this and that, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh yeah. So they miking me up, and he talking all this revolutionary stuff. So then he's like, okay, we about to go live. He said, okay, you ready? Yeah. He said, okay, go. He said, so how's it feel to support a cop killer? So I was already ready because we dealing with Fox. I didn't want to do the joint, but you know, I was instructed, so on and so forth. So everything he's saying, I was like, you know, I was ready for him. So at the end of the joint, when they played it on the news later on that night under my name, he couldn't get me no other way, so he put Ed Brown. And your student Yakini called me like, "Hey Ed, I didn't know your name was Ed."
You know, I've had similar experience. I had one time a guy was about to interview me, and I think it was around Imam Jamil
Mm,
too, and he talked to me about how he knew Fred Hampton, and but
right.
then we get on the air, he says basically the same type of thing,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
So these
yeah.
guys always used to be in the movement. They used to do this or that, but they serving their masters
That's right.
right now, so
That's right.
which is unfortunate.
No doubt. Hey, brother. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'm sorry, let me correct that, Baba. uh
I'm still your brother.
hey, right on, man. So I appreciate you coming on, stay on point. And how can folks get the book? Because I know it's still in circulation for the time being. It might not be after this interview, but
Hey, if they want to get it, but contact, you can either go through the publisher, which is NYU Press, or you could contact get it on Amazon. There's other books, but you could contact me at baba hyphen ak.com, babaak.com.
okay, Baba
Also, my
hyphen.
email address is NUAFRIKA, New Africa, NUAFRIKA at gmail.com.
No doubt. We appreciate you coming on, Baba. We'll see you soon. See you in the whirlwind.
See
And
you. Keep
keep
up the
on
good
rumbling.
work
Yes, sir.
and
I'll
free
see
the
you
line.
soon. No doubt, by any means. We are live, Riot Starter TV. We just had Baba AK in the building. You know what I mean? We will shoot back. Make sure if you don't have that book, get the book. And at the very least, if you can't get the book right now, share this video. Make sure folks know, because of the fact that, again, here at Riot Started TV and Black Power Media, it is, you're going to get information that you're not going to get anywhere else. And that's just, that's just what it is. No, it's not bragging. It's just, to us, it's important that we get our history correct and we get the information from the people who were there or know the people that were there. You know what I mean? So we don't want no confusion. We don't need the white press or even the white left to dictate our reality. You know what I'm saying? As African people, Africans have to deal with our stories, our situations, our contradictions, etc., with African people. And we do that behind closed doors. But at the same time, of course, it's important for us to come along and say, look, these brothers and sisters right here, they put in this work, and we can't, we can't hoard this. Because oftentimes folks are like, well, I don't like this person, or this one's my buddy and that one's cool, and all that type stuff. That's cracker shit. We don't do that over here. So make sure, again, if you haven't subscribed to Black Power Media, make sure you do that. Support our Patreon, and continue to stay on the right side of the barricades. You've been watching Riot Started TV. We out. Check us out tomorrow morning. Remix morning show, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Black Power Media. Salute.